What's up, cunts? Mikethebear here. So, that's not the kind of intro you'd expect from a teacher. And most of you do know this, some don't, but I am actually a teacher. I teach high school, English and visual art. So, Mr. Bear is actually a portrait artist as well as being a full-time sick cunt. But what I wanted to talk about today was a particular student that I had a few years ago. So he was from Somalia and he was a refugee, and he watched his entire village basically raided by a group called Boko Haram, and their name translates roughly to Western education is forbidden. They're an Islamist terrorist organisation, and they're fucking assholes, really. So this kid, we're going to call him Joseph for the purpose of this video, which is certainly not a Somali name. Now, he came over here when he was about 13, and he's really struggled with English. So, especially in my English class, he got maybe 1 in 3 words, and that was it. And you know, that's no environment for a kid. No environment. What the fuck am I saying? I'm not very articulate today. That's not very good circumstances for a kid that's trying to learn English. He's in fucking high school too. So you might be wondering, what can you do for a kid like that in English class, in mainstream English, who doesn't really understand anything? And in reality, when it comes to communicating content, not a whole lot, because they really should be in an English second language school, an ESL school. So unfortunately that wasn't an option because his parents weren't okay with that. I took it upon myself to have a look at him in other classes. I asked his other teachers if they'd mind if I just observed him. Wanted to see what he liked and what he didn't. And one topic in particular that he actually took a lot of interest in was science. So, science classes, he really enjoyed it. He loved the practicality of it, because at the time they were doing experiments with geology, so igneous rocks, all that mumbo jumbo. What I decided to do is integrate science into English, so I did a little bit of a crossover. It wasn't much. Now, to kind of set the scene a bit more, what's happening to Joseph is, because he struggles with English so much, he loses focus and he ends up becoming a distraction to the students around him, and especially the students that he's got a bit of conflict with. So instead of focusing on work, which he can't really do, he couldn't focus on it at all, he just fucks around in class and he distracts those kids. So naturally, instead of actually focusing on the content, which he really couldn't do considering his circumstances, he'd mess around with the other kids. And he ended up being a distraction to both himself and all of the kids around him. Now, whenever he had a conflict, that was just exacerbated by the fact that he couldn't really speak the language all that well. So what I did is I pulled him aside and said, "Hey mate, so clearly you're having issues, okay? So I want to come up with a little agreement for you. You put your best effort and try your hardest in English, and I'm going to give you a little bit of science at the end of every lesson." Now, no one knew this but Joseph. So the rest of the class thought that the fun science that we did at the end of every lesson was, you know, kind of a random thing, whether or not I felt like doing it. And that wasn't the case. It was actually up to... It was actually up to Joseph whether or not we engaged in fun science based on how he behaved in class. So what I did there is I gave him responsibilities. So Joseph was responsible for the class engaging in fun science, and he knew that and no one else did. And all it really took for me to get him back on task when he did get distracted was one look. All I had to do was look at him. And that was it. He was like, "Oh, right, gotta get back to work, gotta get back to work." Because the distractions were still there. But in this way, I mitigated a lot of the issues. Now, he did fall down every now and then, but simply giving him responsibilities transformed him into pretty close to an ideal student given his circumstances. And it's amazing how much you can do just by telling a kid, "Hey, it's up to you to do this, I'm giving you a chance here." He did want to learn, it's just that he didn't feel he could. And once you get into that cycle of distraction, it's really difficult to get out of it, especially considering his circumstances. Now, a lot of his other teachers tended to write him off because of this. They didn't have the time or weren't willing to put in the effort to get him to where he needed to be. Oh, fuck yeah, tunnel. But it really does not take that much effort. I mean, integrating fun science into the classroom took maybe 5 minutes out of my total teaching time. So out of 70 minutes, I had to remove 5 and dedicate it to fun science. And for a lot of teachers that can be pretty difficult because there's a lot to communicate in that amount of time, and it did mean that I had to start restructuring and changing how I planned things out. But it was really worth it because for the first time Joseph got a C. Now this kid had been on D's and E's for pretty much his entire schooling career in Australia. And merely by giving him some responsibility and encouraging him to focus, we got his grades up. He fucking passed. Now, if there's one message I can leave you with, it's that there's no such thing as a bad kid. Only bad behaviour. And there's always a root cause. Modelling proper behaviour is just a matter of finding out what that cause is and removing it or replacing it with something else. Anyway guys, that's it. Hope you all have a fantastic day, and I will see you cunts later.
Baby, let the light shine through. If you believe it's true, baby, won't you let the light shine through for you?